Hello. Good evening,
Hello, hello,
STC,
hello.
and hello, world. Yes, my name is Adrian Tampolino, and I'm zooming in from Singapore. And we are broadcasting live from Manila, Philippines. And welcome to the first episode of Arktoberfest 2020. Online with me and co hosting with me tonight, of course, is our Vice President and, of course, our chair for Arktoberfest 2020, Architect Archie Tolentino. Hello, Archie.
Hi. Hello, hello, Adrian. Tamps. Hindi ako sanay na
Ano
Adrian eh.
na?
Tamps na lang. Hi, Tamps. So, good evening,
Hello.
everyone. Tamps said, I'm Archie Tolentino, the VP for South Triangle, Quezon City chapter.
Quezon City, triangle.
Oo, yung Quezon City nasa South Triangle. Kaya,
Kinakabahan kasi tayo masyado ngayon eh.
medyo kinakabahan tayo kasi
Oo.
medyo, first
Medyo,
time.
yeah, first time. First time na online. Well, kasi second year pa lang naman ng Oktoberfest at syempre,
Yes.
due to circumstances,
Yes.
online tayo ngayon.
Yes.
However, it didn't stop us for bringing a massive event for this month. Not only
Yes.
to our chapter but also to the rest of the our architecture community. Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Agree.
So
Yeah.
yun na nga. So for tonight, Archie, what do we have?
Okay, for tonight, uh, our first activity for Oktoberfest 2020 is entitled Bar Talk Friday. But before that, I would just like to somehow, yung sa mga bagong nanonood, no? Ano ba tong Oktoberfest? Kasi um second year pa lang nung Oktoberfest na to, parang no, sounds familiar. Ang ano lang, simple lang, Oktoberfest. So, architecture saka Oktoberfest. Bakit gano'n? Kasi, sa mga hindi nakakaalam, malalaman nyo na, South Triangle has been known for being a very good chapter in terms of creating fellowship activities. Fellowship, when we say fellowship, more of ano yan, parating may beer, may good
More beer?
time, more beer. So, we thought of an idea na pagsamahin yung, like, let's say, yung normal seminars and then putting or blending in the South Triangle, ano ba tawag doon? Tatak STC, di ba?
Oh,
South
tatak
Triangle flavor
STC.
man tawag doon. Ano man tawag doon? So, yun na, dito na nabuo yung Oktoberfest. Pero ang origin story talaga niyan ng Oktoberfest, Tams, alam mo ba kung saan?
Malalaman natin mamaya. Malalaman natin mamaya. Ikukwento rin kasi natin siya sa guest natin tonight.
Okay.
Oo, di ba?
Sige.
Ikukwento din natin sa kanya. So,
Sige.
paano ba? Start na ba tayo? Ipakilala na ba natin ang ating guest for tonight?
Sige, to officially welcome
Okay.
everyone to this first activity for the Oktoberfest 2020, our Bar Talk Friday. Guest for tonight, intro ko lang ng konti. Alam ko kilala na nila kasi grabe yung ano natin, yung social media marketing natin.
Oo,
Ilang taon?
sumabog kagabi ang social media, ang
Oo,
Facebook,
nag-down
natataranta nga yung mga tao eh, how to join, ganyan. O, di ba?
nag-down eh. Nag-down
Oo.
yung server natin, no. 29
Oo.
million paano na tayo viewers.
Di ba? 29 million.
Ayan, pero to introduce our first speaker,
Okay.
he is the principal architect of WTA Architecture and Design Studio. He is the festival director of Anthology Architecture and Design Festival since 2016. 2016 na pala yung Tams, no? Dami na palang
2016.
anthology. A column writer for the newspaper The Inquirer. And meron din siyang hindi ko alam po weekly or every 2 weeks or every day na Pero he graduated from the National University of Singapore with a master's degree in urban design in 2012 and acquired his bachelor's degree in architecture from the University of Santo Tomas. Goes in
Hosted.
2002. He founded WT Architecture and Design Studio in 2007, a firm in who believes in and practices architecture that is socially relevant. May mga project nila may kakaiba kasi may mga social
Mm.
significance, may mga experimental projects sila. Mamaya ikwento na lang nila yan. Relates to the community, promotes urbanism, and develops society as a whole. WTA focuses on design excellence with a rational design process that fosters idea generation with works on various projects that develop a social architecture that builds communities. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome architect William
William
T.
T.
Hey
Woo,
all.
welcome to the show.
Woo!
Welcome to Arktoberfest 2020.
Yan, yan. Sir, medyo COVID hair tayo ngayon ah.
Oo nga eh, wala
COVID.
eh.
Pero yun, um, welcome sir to the show. Welcome Will. William na lang. Sabi nga niya, William, ang kulit mo. Taps
Yeah,
eh.
no,
Sabi ng
William
William
lang.
eh. Wag
Yeah,
nang
yeah.
mag-sir eh.
Let's have fun.
Oh, let's have fun. So, yun nga, as we were, what do you call this? Promoting your Oktoberfest, we were sort of chiming doon sa, or harping doon sa Horizon Manila ba? Horizons Manila? Horizon Manila
Horizon.
project.
Yeah.
Pero before that, William, we would like to ask you, share a little bit of your, kasi mahilig ka sa mga superhero eh, mga, di ba, parang may mga
Mm.
toys ka dyan, di ba? To share a little bit
Mm.
more about your origin story. Ano bang origin story ni William T?
Well, I grew up in Tondo, in Manila. And so ever since talaga, well, I play basketball on the streets, I take the jeepney going to UST. I used to walk to school when I was in primary and secondary school. And I think my first part-time job had me walking around Manila, Binondo primarily, just knocking at doors and as a messenger boy for whatever.
Oh, wow.
So I think pretty much I really grew up in the streets in a lot of ways, and so this kind of like allowed me to appreciate like what really matters in our cities. And I think primarily we architects, we tend to forget that the streetscape actually is a much bigger component of our cities
Mhm.
than the buildings that we actually focus our efforts on. So sometimes, I think with the work we do, we prefer to engage more, with the streetscape, with the community, and always we're looking for, social impact in the things that we do, whether it's in small gestures or, bigger ways sometimes. But at the end of the day, I think my primary goal as an architect is to advocate for social change. And so really that is me, as an architect.
Wow. Medyo, ano lang, amazing to hear. I never thought na, kasi ako I also grew up playing basketball in the streets. Diba? So para sa akin, hindi ko
Masaya,
ma-imagine.
di ba?
Si William T, nagba-basketball. Eh, minsan basketball, masira tsinelas mo, nakapaa ka maglaro. Diba? Parang,
Yeah, yeah.
talaga? Si William T? Pero ano, it's really humbling to know, no? Parang for an architect with your kind of practice, with your level of excellence. Sabihin na natin excellence kasi parang ano ba, parang nabasa ko top, ano ba kayo ngayon, Will? Top
Yeah. Top
for
10.
sa
Yeah.
top 10? Oh, medyo humble pa siya.
Oo. Basta nasa
Medyo
top 10 yan.
sa top 10. Top
Oo.
10. Parang to hear that kind of parang yun nga, beginning, di ba? Parang streets, and it made him more attached or in tune to the culture, street culture basically. Walking street culture. Pero you said nag-messenger ka? What do you mean paano nag-messenger?
Yeah, because I used to work for this Filipino Chinese organization. So, syempre, as a young guy, I think I was like maybe 14 or something like that. So,
Wow.
golfer ka muna eh. Di ba? You start as a golfer talaga.
Tama.
So, you bring this here, you go to the newspaper. Eh, syempre, before, wala pang text eh. So, every time you need to bring something or wala pang email masyado, di ba? So, you need to bring something to the newspapers or, other organizations. You actually have to go there. So that's what I, used to do actually when I was a kid.
Errands talaga.
Errand boy, basically.
Errand boy basically. Pero do you think that also helped you na basically ang tanong, kailan mo naisip na magiging arkitekto ako? Architecture ang kukunin ko sa ano?
I think as with 90% of us, maybe probably we took up architecture because for our love to draw, diba? So parang, for our love of drawing, and that really started for me with comic books. So even now, I still collect comic books. I read a lot of comic books, and I think the idea, especially me, because my favorite is Spider-Man, and then the backdrop is
Yeah,
always the city,
city.
skyscrapers and all that. So parang, syempre, you always kind of like hope you can be a comic book artist, pero hindi tayo pinagpala. So,
Hmm.
and then kind of decided maybe I can just do the background. Then.
Para mas maganda yung drawing ng buildings ng New York kaysa si mismong Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Parang gano'n ang nangyari. Ayun. So, I guess, yun nga, part of your introduction, UST, because it's close to home, ganun.
Yeah, Tomasino tayo.
Tomasino,
Yes.
Tomasino tayo. Yan. So, yun nga, Tamps.
Well, well,
Sabay ba to, no? Parang off guard.
oo, nakaka-starstruck talaga, guys.
Oo, no?
William T. at William pa ang tawag mo sa kanya.
Oo nga,
Uh,
feeling ko
Speaking
dyan.
of beginnings, share namin sa iyo, William, on how actually this program started, this Arktoberfest started. It was February of 2019. Sa Intramuros lang yon habang nag-ano kami, dito, nagmi-milk tea. Ewan ko, milk tea ako noon. Halo-halo ata si Archie.
Razons
Si
ako nun,
or si
razons.
Mitchie halo-halo, ganyan. Tapos,
Mm.
may isa pa kaming ka-chapter na, of course, nasa milk tea. Habang nangongolekta lang kami ng CPD. Tapos, ayun. It was
Anthology
during,
to, ah?
yeah, anthology. Anthology lang naman
Anthology.
to. Yeah, it was during anthology na 2019 in which naisip namin na paano kaya if our chapter actually have this kind of event. And then
Yes.
si Archie spin noon. Then sabi ko, oo, sige, pwede. Pero hindi niya alam paalis na ako ng Pilipinas, na papunta na ako din sa Singapore. So, yun, magulat-gulat na lang ako. Tinuloy nila for the first year. Then on the second year, dahil COVID, yun nga. And then, ayun nga, nandito na tayo, online. Yes,
Yep.
and we
Yep.
would like to thank you also for being an inspiration to the chapter. Yeah,
Yep.
minsan
We're
ano
glad that
yeah,
Anthology is able to have something to do with this
yeah,
event.
A lot.
yeah. Nanganak si
A lot.
Anthology basically.
Kaya naging Arktoberfest. Pero yun nga,
Yeah.
since binanggit na rin ni Tams, last year kasi, ang ginawa namin was, isa pa kasing thrust ng chapter is technology.
Yes.
So, yun talaga yung parang assignment namin from national. Since yung membership namin is a little bit younger than usual, we're more on technology. So, we thought of how do we marry the two ideas, yung October, like what you did in anthology, and technology. So, last year, we had a Balangkasan event in UEPHQ. Successful mo siya, half day siya. And then after that, there was an after party in Tony's, yung bar just on the other side of the street. And then ang medyo nakakatuwa dun kasi we were able to get San Miguel as a sponsor for the event. So there was a overflowing beer and everything. So happy ganyan with the band. Tapos yung mga ibang chapter na umattend, they were asking, ganito ba kayo parati sa chapter? Like, parang may balak pa kayo lumipat. pero that was the first installment. And then with this year nga, with everybody adjusting, everybody, with the pandemic and everything, we just wanted to go ahead with the plan. Adjust na lang with the situation. Di ba? Ganun talaga.
Adjustment from 1 day to 1 month, ganyan.
From 1 day
Well,
to
that's
1
for
month.
everyone naman right now.
Yeah.
Yep, agree. So yun, William, should we get right on it? Nakita ko kasi yung
Yeah.
kaya medyo na kung invite ka, nakita ko yung picture mo with Yorme.
Yeah.
Oh, sabi ko ano ba
Post
to?
mo nga, ayan.
Ano ba?
Yan, pati si Ferb, member namin yan. Classmate ko yan.
Talaga. Nandito siya ngayon eh.
Hi, Fer!
Yan. So yun, if we must ask, what is Horizon Manila?
Well, Horizon Manila is one of the reclamation projects that is going to be happening in Manila soon. I think we're first off the gate. And the idea really is parang we have this 406-hectare reclamation project, and it will be developed by private partners. And so it's really at no cost to the government. And what the government actually gets out of it is they get about 20 20% of the land of the developable the buildable land. They get about 20%, and that's for them to develop as they please, no. And then the idea really is that the government needs more space to grow Manila, and so I think we have a particular focus on public space. And me personally, I think I have a focus on public buildings, as a means of actually um, getting people more involved, in our communities, trying to build a more active citizenry. And so I think it was really kind of like focusing on like what we can imagine Manila to be. But yeah, but anyway, so it's basically a reclamation project. It's a 406-hectare reclamation project. One of, I think, three that will be in Manila. And I think there's going to be two more eventually in Pasay. But I think we're either going to be the first or second of the reclamation projects to start.
I see. I see. So dun sa plan that I saw, or the drawings or the renderings that I saw, there were like three major land masses.
Mhm.
No? Was it strategic
Yes.
na parang phasing development, or how did you go about arriving to that kind of plan?
Yeah, I think the length of the parcel. First of all, we did not dictate the shape of the islands. No?
Okay.
So that was a given to us before we came into the project. But
Mhm.
I think what dictated those islands was that the Philippine Coast Guard and Navy, they needed waterways to pass through because it's quite long. And so
Yes.
we wanted to make sure that the waterways were opened up, and each of those waterways are about 120 meters wide.
Oh
And
wow.
so para they make sure that they're wider than the Pasig River actually. So they make sure that the boats can go through.
Nice, nice. And you're involved here sa planning, or
Yeah, we're the ones who are doing the master plan for the development, basically.
master plan? Master plan.
Yeah.
Okay. And the three islands are divided into what? Parang I'm sure may
Yeah,
commercial,
so we have
residential.
three islands, and then we have about 28 different communities or barangays. I mean,
Oh wow.
I
Mhm.
think they're interchangeable in this sense. We really don't look at it as three islands and then commercial, residential. Actually, even now in this office, we don't really look at it that way. We try to see them as different barangays. Like maybe imagine 28 different barangays or component communities. And so we wanted, it's almost experimental in a way,
Hmm.
that we wanted to see how we can build a master plan from the bottom up, instead of like a top level master plan that you see, very standard, right? And so we wanted to avoid this look of like, if you see a lot of master plans, they kind of look like SimCity, right?
Yeah.
And they look like they have a stadium here, they have like a huge bridge there, an attention, and then glass buildings everywhere. So we wanted to kind of like avoid this and put the focus on like the piazzas, the community amenities, the feature, the public buildings. So yeah, so that was the focus, not the towers and all that. And so we wanted, my ideas about architecture have always been about making architecture hyper local. Having everything accessible to people locally, in their own communities without having to maybe commute or drive, right? So I think that's really one of our focuses. So each of these communities are actually mixed use already. I mean, of course, some of them are primarily residential, some are primarily commercial or retail, but each of them will have a housing component, each of them will have a commercial component. The idea is that you should have a good and healthy mix in each community. And even in Singapore, I live in Singapore for a bit, right? In Singapore, what you have is you have people from the HDBs, right? Then you all go to
Yes.
the mall where the metro station is connected, and then you go to work. Which for me is not a very appealing, way of living. I would rather have people more mixed, have a healthier mix of people in each community, be able to work closer to home. So that's really the goal of this development.
Nice. Nice. So, in a way, yung childhood experience mo na like let's say an errand boy going around the streets, you got to experience that, and I think na-ingrain yun with your practice na. So I think in all your projects you have that kind of quality in your projects.
Yeah, I think one of the more distinct things about Manila kasi is that we have our barangays. Right?
Per
In
street.
Manila kasi, in Tondo especially, no, every street is a barangay, di ba?
Every street's a
It's a
So
barangay.
different barangay. Yes.
yeah, so I think I really kind of like latch onto this, and also you're very aware of the differences between, let's say, you're in Santa Cruz, you're in Ongpin or Binondo, you're in Quiapo, you're in Tondo, so you're aware of the character of each. I don't know what to call it. This it's not even a district, but like it's a like each community, right? So we wanted to recreate that because we feel that is what Manila is. You have these like small communities with their own distinct characters that you can actually identify.
Mm-hmm,
And yeah, so I wanted to kind of like make this like, okay, it's an image of a better Manila. It's what
mm-hmm,
Manila can be.
mm-hmm,
But it's not BGC.
mm-hmm.
We don't want to pick up something from, let's say, Manhattan and put it in our country. We want to imagine a better urbanity that we can grow on our own.
Agree. Again with your hyper
Yeah,
localization.
differ, oh.
Si Taps.
Cipher.
Saka yung toys ni ano ni Will. So yun, can you also talk about the experience na of course you had to present this sa sa city government. How did they take pa yung
Yeah, I
concept?
think we have the most amazing mayor in Manila right now. I don't know if you guys agree with that. In all honesty, like doing the quarantine facilities, right? Well, during the lockdown, right? I met every single mayor in Metro Manila. I think,
Uh-huh.
but Yorme is really different. I think he really works hard. Okay, the reality is when you present to government, they don't listen, right?
Mm,
Architecture,
yeah.
some of them are talking on the phone, some of them are
Mm,
like whatever.
mm.
Um, Yorme is quite different. He really tries to understand, and actually, siya na nga yung naging bankero. Siya pa yung nagkukwento, ganyan din, ganyan
Ah,
din.
okay.
So like
Nice.
he's very involved, I think, in terms of like trying to understand, the architecture, the planning involved, and he cares actually. And I think that's really all we can ask for because I mean, obviously, we the architects, we're the technical guys, right? But our hope is that our politicians, parang that they actually appreciate and try to understand, the ideas behind what we're trying to do as designers, as architects. So believe ako, I think in that sense, talagang someone I can get behind. And I think the hope is that, the energy, he's trying to transfer the energy of this one person into like building a better city. And
Mhm.
hopefully we can be a big part of it.
Mhm. And what an opportunity, lalo parang pagka looking back dun sa story din ni Yorme, 'di ba? I mean, in a way, he also grew up in the streets. So parang
Oh,
you
Yes.
have
Batang
that in
Maynila eh.
common. Oh, 'di ba?
Batang
Parang you
Manila.
have that in common, 'di ba? Batang Maynila tapos taga Tondo, 'di ba? Parang
Yeah.
there's a common thread, and I think you guys speak the same language. Pabaliktad ka rin ba
Oh.
magsasalita?
Hindi ko napulot yun eh.
Hindi mo napulot. Mga
Pero
logis
nagturo
din
niya
yan, eh.
yung school niya, his classroom. He's a very real
Oo.
person. Like, oh, he points out, oh, this was my classroom before. Because we were in, I think the first time I met him, we were in Tondo National High School. So like he was
Oh,
pointing
wow.
out, his classroom where they used to play. So I think it's really something to see someone who is more very in touch, with the people. I think that's important.
Sabi mo nga, he's gonna be somebody na you're gonna back up, no? Because
He's
he's
worth
genuine.
backing up.
Genuine talaga, genuine ang ano ni Yorme. Natawa ko pa isang beses may napanood interview ni Yorme sa radyo yata. Napanood sa radyo, eh, 'no, 'di kasi nakastream yung mga radio ngayon, eh.
Oh,
Okay.
Tuwang-tuwa siya, parang pinakita pa niya yung PS4 niya kasi minsan daw dun siya natutulog sa City Hall. Parang, "Oh, wow, si Yorme may PS4." Latest yung games niya, may mga Call of Duty, ganyan. So, I agree with you, very, very genuine. Yun, what else, Tabs?
how about on the toys?
Yan.
Oh, the
Doon tayo sa
toys. Yeah.
seryoso.
Yes.
Well,
um, yeah,
okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, like I think you just collect what you enjoy, right? In my
Okay.
case, I've always I think ever since I was a child I've always liked toys, and then syempre now we have the opportunity to buy what we want. So I guess
Mm.
maybe we spoil ourselves a bit in that regard. So I guess that's how it goes.
Do you know how many toys you have? Lost count?
Not exactly, not exactly.
Oh, sige, ganito na lang. What's the most valuable figure or toy you have in your collection?
It's not
However you
here right
define.
now.
However you define valuable.
However I define it. Okay, so
Mm.
if you look to the to my right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I still have like those are original Voltes 5 and Voltron figures
Oh,
from the
wow.
80s.
Oh.
And then so yeah, of course that the things that you were actually able to preserve from your childhood are valuable. I still have my Castle Grayskull from the 80s. I have
He-Man.
like yeah, He-Man has always been my favorite.
You have the
So
same
when I
hair na
was
ngayon.
oh nga eh. Yeah, so and then I think I have this like a set of like statues here beside
Oh,
me from
wow.
Yoda to like a He-Man statue, Jurassic Park, Marvel and stuff.
Nice. All
Like the
cluster ba
things
yun?
that kind of like matter to me personally, I like always for them to be by my side. I think like na parang if I need, sometimes you need a picker upper during the day. You just glance to your side, okay, that's Master Yoda. So
There
parang
is no try.
yeah. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Sometimes it's really, and even if you go around this office, I mean, right now you have, of course, what you can see is the room I'm in. But actually, around pretty much around the office, we have toys everywhere, and I really wanted to be able to build an office where play is an important part of the culture.
Yep.
I think I never really worked too long. I probably should have worked longer than I did. Um, but when I worked, the offices I work in were pretty serious kasi.
Mm.
And I think we should be serious about architecture, but we
Mm-hmm.
should be enjoying life. And so I that's how I see it. I think I'm serious about my architecture, but not about work definitely.
Yeah.
So
Kailangan,
yeah, that's really I think a good and I think toys are always an important part of that for me.
baga, you need to have that the childlike creativity or imagination, not taking things too seriously. Kasi nasa creative field tayo, di ba? So, sometimes you kind of feel na, oh my God, it's like magkano budget for a project. So, in a way, it kind of gets to you. You kind of
Yeah,
forget
and
that,
actually, if you think about it, right, we always say, one of the most common things that you hear about architecture is that there has to be a culture of exploration and experimentation.
yes.
That is exactly what playing is, diba? Why do children play? They play because they are exploring their surroundings, they're learning about their environment, they're experimenting, and that is really what playing is. Even in animals, actually, that's what they do. They're learning how to hunt. When you
Mhm,
see, dogs, puppies,
mhm,
kittens playing around, they're learning, right? And
mhm.
so I think it's important for us to be able to preserve, this yearning for as long as we can, and even hopefully till we die. So,
Yes.
I think that's really something that we wanted to be a big part of our culture in the office.
Mm. So, pwede magdala pala ng toy sa office nyo pag ano. Okay yun ah.
Actually, maraming nagdadala ng sarili nilang toys. I think marami din kasing toy people in the office. So they
Mhm.
bring their own stuff also for them to put around in their own spaces, I would say.
Nice.
But you don't need to basically in this office because actually whatever part of geekdom you enjoy, baka you will be able to find here. So I'm proud geek. So,
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. Yung mga pictures mo nga, nakita ko, punta ka pa ng Comic Con. Sabi ko, wow, meron siya figure. Saka yung full size, ano ba, life size figure ni Spider-Man?
yeah, yeah. There's a life-size Spider-Man in the stairs just before you get to our office, in the landing.
Ah,
Parang welcome, siya yung welcoming ano namin. welcoming
Inspiring.
party namin.
Siya yung ano, nakapantay doon. Ayun, let me just take a right turn a little bit kasi may mga pumapasok na questions sa ano natin, sa
Yes.
chat.
Yeah,
Oo.
yeah. Let's hear about that.
Yan. Tamps, meron ka bang makikita diyan? Eto si
Kay
ano,
Sir Noyping. Yan.
yan.
More on the he's asking about the Manila Horizon or Horizon Manila.
Mhm.
Uh, the timeline, of course, is we're in Manila Bay, and of course, environmental impact. Siyempre, well, as a planner trained, of course, and also a landscape architecture trained, marami naman ako naririnig. Actually, gusto ko rin siya itanong. In terms of
Mm.
environmental impact, what is the impact and we're in Manila Bay and timeline?
Actually, juicy to. So okay, let's start with that. We're in Manila Bay. Okay.
Yeah, we're
So
in Manila
Horizon
Bay.
Manila is about 3 kilometers away from the shore of Manila. Okay. So I actually would. So basically, it's the size of it. If you're standing in Manila or by the bay, the buildings would probably be about like this size.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
So so I actually have a photo from our side towards Manila. So it's the same distance. Diba? So you can see the 50-story buildings in Manila are about this size. So,
Mhm. Oh, wow.
so if my screen right now is the no, you see these small buildings here. This the
That's
small
small.
maquettes that they're about that size. Yeah, that's the size of the buildings you will see.
Basically, parang may
So
isang city ulit.
yeah, so it's basically like kind of like Victoria Harbor in Hong Kong, where you have this like
Yeah,
side of
yeah, yeah.
Kowloon and Central, right? So that's the distance that you have. Secondly, timeline. The idea is for us to be able to start second half of next year. That's our timeline at least. And it will take us about 4 to 6 years, but we're saying 6 to 8 years to finish this. So I think that's about it. For us to be able to finish reclamation, then of course development will start after, or simultaneously from the first island. Um, Regarding the environment, I've always been a contrarian when it comes to environmental issues. Okay.
Mhm.
I think the most the best way we can actually live in our planet is for us to live in compact cities. I don't subscribe to decongesting, the cities, because I feel like that is giving up, right? It's basically people saying na parang, dude, ikaw sa probinsya ka na lang.
Mm. Mm.
Bakit siya, hindi ikaw? Diba?
Mm.
For everyone who is saying that, right? Bakit hindi sila umalis? Why are they here?
Mm.
Right? It is because, the history of human civilization, right? From, I don't know, when was the first city from Ur, before then, actually in summer, has
Mm.
always been about people moving to the city. It has always been that direction, right? And I do not think that that trend will be reversed in our lifetimes. And so I feel it's always for us to be able to come up with a better way of living in our cities, right? Making our cities better, making them more livable. But I always feel like everyone should have the right to come to our cities. We should not subscribe to this idea of segregation where ikaw probinsyano ka, hindi ka taga rito.
Yeah.
That
Mm.
is the worst that can happen to our country. I think that's the worst thing that I can imagine. So I do not subscribe to that. I definitely do not. Secondly, I think we have to densify our cities, because at the end of the day, the smaller footprint we have, the better for the environment. You can have these nice 2-story houses spreading all over this country, all the way to Cavite, Laguna, wherever you want. They will never be good for the environment. Imagine the amount of land that they're occupying. Imagine the amount of fuel you are burning just to get to work, right? The infrastructure that you have to put in, the pipes, the canals, the wires, everything is exponentially more because they're spread out. So let's not talk about whether they're good for for lifestyle or the city or what or architecture. If you want to talk about the environment, that's the worst thing you can do for the environment. to spread out like locusts.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think the smaller a footprint we have as a people, as a species, the better for the planet in general. So that's one of the things that I have. And so that being said, my idea about reclaiming reclamation is that you're looking at like point zero something percent of Manila Bay. Right? So if I the carrying capacity of Horizon is about 250,000 people. And but of course I'm projecting maybe about 100,000, 150,000 people eventually. Um, so imagine 100,000 people traveling to work from Cavite. How much infrastructure do you have to put in place to handle that? Right? Let's be honest, the jobs are in Manila. They're not outside Metro Manila. They never will be. We can imagine building our new cities everywhere, wherever we want to, in the north, in the south. That will not change the fact that majority of jobs will be in the city. You can see that anywhere in the world. We're not special children, right? We will not be the only country in the world to have a different case, because everywhere else in the world, that's what happens. People go to the city to work, right? And I mean, if you want to go to the province and farm, have a quiet life, I mean, more power to you, honestly, right? I mean, you're something special or someone special, good for you. But the vast majority of people will always, be attracted to the bright lights of the big city. And in terms of environmental impact, what we're trying to do is we're actually using the our fill material will be coming from the Manila Bay itself. So we're actually going to be getting fill material from the water from San Nicolas Shoal in Cavite. So it will be just transferring material from one part of Manila Bay
Manila Bay.
to another. We're not chopping off any mountains. I don't even think it makes sense to have to haul like rocks from a mountain to the one. I don't know. I mean, like I really like to talk about environmental concerns actually. So I hopefully you'd have some also because talking about them intelligently is actually very good.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is like people will always say I have environmental concerns, but when you ask them what are your
Your
concerns,
concern, they cannot say.
they have none, right? Because it's good because I mean obviously any idea in the world will have two sides to it, right? I mean I might love density and the cities, you might love the countryside. But it's always good to be talking about concrete things, about actual things. So for example, the shore protection that we're using armored rocks. We're not blasting off a mountain and then bringing the rocks to the water. Um, we're not our particular site is not on any of the fishing grounds or hatcheries. So they're not disturbing that. In terms of like I think migratory birds, if you see the plans of Horizon, which I can show you, we're very particular about building a robust green network. And actually, you're giving all these like waterfowl actually a landing zone. Right behind my office is a creek. We have herons nesting there. We have unfortunately squirrels there, but they're cute. And it's always amazing to look out the window and see. Because say I'm on the third floor, so basically we're on the tree canopy. So it's
Nice.
always amazing, to see all these creatures going around and hearing the water and all that. I think that's what we have. That's why we built a canal park in the middle of the development. The idea is that this park stretches across the entirety of the islands, the three islands. No? It bisects the three islands, and then they will always be open to the public. But also they will be accessible and act as a corridor for wildlife, also to go through the islands. So I don't know what other concerns would you have that we can talk about more.
And yeah, let's see if we can open a program for that. We'll invite you again.
Alam ko may concerns ka na now eh.
No,
Pag-usapan
no, no,
natin.
wala pa naman, wala pa naman sila. Although to the viewers, if you have questions, again, with regards to his toys, to Horizon Manila, just key it in our comment box.
Pero no, no, the way
Um,
that, yeah.
One of the things that we are very particular about Horizon, I think, like, I mean, the problem with sustainability, right? We always think of ourselves as we're Americans, eh? We're Filipinos, basically are Americans at
Yeah,
heart. We
yes.
think of ourselves so we basically absorb the American problems, right? So they think about because they're so bad in terms of energy consumption. We think we are also. We're not. Manila is very, very sustainable in terms of energy consumption. Of course, that does not mean that we have good electricity rates. We have the worst in the world. But I mean, but in terms of consumption per capita, we are actually very, very sustainable in terms of power consumption. For me, our main environmental challenge is water scarcity because we do not have big rivers, right? We do not have big rivers, and we are polluting our rivers as well. So one of the key issues that I wanted to deal with when we were doing Horizon was to be able to make sure that we will be self-sustaining in terms of fresh water. So we're doing something like what they did in the Singapore barrage, where we're retaining water. We're building some between the waterways and the canals. We will actually have about, I mean, at 250,000 people, we have about 6 months worth of water supply or water reserve. But honestly, I think if we have a population of about 100, 150,000, we will be self-sustaining now basically in terms of water, and we might even be able to supply back to the city. So that's of particular interest for me to be able to collect all the runoff that will be happening in Horizon. That's why we have the canal in the middle actually. And this will be augmented, of course, if ever there's a drought with a desalination plant. And also the barrage. The barrage helps us to generate clean power and energy. But my primary concern really is water scarcity.
Well, ironic, no? Water scarcity, pero malaki ang volume ng tubig sa atin in terms of, especially pag rainy season. Diba?
We don't collect kasi we don't have enough dams.
Yeah.
We have. When was the last time you heard the Philippines build a dam anywhere in this damn country?
Never in my
Mm,
lifetime.
never in my lifetime kasi laging may rally about it or something.
Yeah. So how many Filipinos were there when we were born? I remember when I was in grade school, there were 40 million Filipinos.
Oh, wow.
Right? That's what I had. We had in our textbooks. There's 100 million Filipinos now, and obviously our lifestyles now, especially as we become, a more developed nation, our
Mhm.
water consumption will increase. Di ba? Kasi we will want more.
Exactly.
So I think that's a big problem for us and the future generation to address. And medyo failure na nga yung generation natin because if we're not building it now, we're probably not gonna be seeing it in the next 10 years. Right? So medyo fail na nga yung generation natin eh. So, or at least my generation. Maybe hindi pa, may pag-asa pa kami. But, um, kasi masyado tayong for today. We're always looking at just the present.
Yeah.
So I think you have to remember that architecture and infrastructure in general is for tomorrow. Whatever we're building now is for 5, 10 years down the road, right? The impact is not for today, it's not for yesterday, it's for what comes next. So I think that's why architects, we must project. We actually must be futurists also. And so I think that's very important for us to actually absorb, as a profession.
Nice. Nice. So yung self-sustainability, is it like a big part of the Horizons Manila project? Kasi from what I'm hearing, it sounds like Horizon Manila is gonna be like operating everything on its own. It can stand on its own with own power, own water, like the way it's planned. There is a parang own industry, commercial, ganyan. So you're also trying to avoid people going in and out of that development. Is that the target?
No, no. I was very particular. Actually, I want to meet with the PRA soon because of this. I'm very particular that I want as many connection points between Horizon Manila and the mainland as possible. At the end of the day, that I really do not subscribe to segregation, and that is that's largely the problem we have in our CBDs. If you look at BGC, there's basically a few entry points. I think four or so.
Mhm.
If you look at even Makati, there were a few entry points only from EDSA, right? Or
Yep.
from Manila. So I think we must, but those are already doing pretty well. But if you imagine the Bay Area, the Bay City area, that's really bad in terms of accessibility. I think the connection points really is very singular. So I think my hope really is to be able to build more connectivity between the islands and the main city of Manila. Because I think one of the reasons we're also building Horizon, at least for me personally, is that we want to give Manileños more room to breathe, more space. Manila is the densest city in the world right now. We have about 71,000 people per square kilometer. Hopefully, we can lower that a bit, especially once this development is pushed through. So I really hope, and then one of my pet peeves, is that in our country, in our city, we have public areas that are fenced off from the public.
Yes.
Uh, and
Yes.
so one of the goals that why we built this canal really is that, like I said, if you don't have a car, we have public transport. If you just want to bike or walk, you can walk from one end of the island to the other. There are parks on all four sides of the island where you can see the water. The waterfront is open to the public. It's a boardwalk. It's either a boardwalk or a promontory. And really, we wanted to make sure that these public spaces are enjoyed by not just the people in Horizon but Manileños in general. Medyo di na tayo makahinga eh. I think
Mm.
we need room to grow. I think as a people also.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, yung sinabi mo na yan, it reminded me of one of your articles. I clipped a part of it. Let me just read it quickly. On smart technologies, oftentimes architecture is described as high tech to provide an illusion of something better. New technologies and materials that team to provide us with the modern comforts of what we need. Yet this is not the solution we need. The technology that we need exists in the skills and methods that we develop to better plan for and project the needs of our future environment. Sustainable lifestyles always trump sustainable materials, if only because these same materials drive a commercial agenda to get us to consume more. The most sustainable car will not be the Tesla that consumes power generated by a faraway coal plant, but the one that sits unused in the garage because you can reach your destination without it. Parang nung
Sounds like me.
I have proof pero pero sounds ano 'no, para siyang contrarian kasi you can parang make Tesla poster boy for sustainability with electricity, renewable energy. Pero like you said, the moment na hindi mo na kailangan ng kotse, then that would be the most sustainable situation for everyone.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, yeah, sali ka sa amin.
So yan.
One of
Sama,
my guys
sama.
there.
Cheers.
No, so I think at the end of the day, kasi, we're like I said, we look too much towards the Americans. Electric cars is the pipe dream of the American hope for sustainability because they have to drive from the suburbs to the city. That's really
Yes.
there. They have McMansions for everyone. Three people living in a 1,000 square meter house. That's
Yes.
never gonna be sustainable, right?
Yes.
I think me personally, I feel like, of course, architects were beholden to our vendors, our suppliers. That's why we have to, pair up this idea of like, oh, let's use green materials, these LEED certified, whatever this, whatever that. At the end of the day, if you the main the mere fact that you have to ship all these things here
Yeah.
destroys the sustainability of it, right? I think there is something to be said for simplicity of material, that we use materials that are actually legible to our own people, right? And also, I think there's something to be said that you know the way we live is already very sustainable. If you look at there's this graph that shows per capita consumption or per capita green CO2 emissions in cities around the world.
Mhm.
Asia is in this extreme that's super sustainable.
Oh
right?
wow.
Europe is probably in the right place here if I draw the graph. Then New York is somewhere here as well. But then all the other American cities are like fucked up, you know. So the idea really here is that sustainability is not about the materials, right? If I will use, I'll give you an example. I will put solar panels on the roof, right? I
Yeah.
will recycle all my water, use gray water. All my materials will be LEED certified, will be recycled. Whatever. I won't use air conditioning. I'll have passive cooling, whatever, etc., etc., etc. But if I have 1,000 square meter house,
Damn.
that will never be more sustainable than a small apartment, right? So forget, and the reality is that the people who actually can afford these like so-called sustainable green materials are people who have houses like that, right? So it's almost in a way it's like whitewashing, yourself. Right? It's like saying, oh, I'm sustainable, I'm being good, I'm helping the environment, but
Greenwashing.
yeah, greenwashing it, diba? So the reality is it's not sustainable. It will never be. And so my hope really is that in our lifetimes, we start to realize this, and we, embrace a more sustainable future, that hinges on our lifestyles. And we already are very sustainable. We live in a very sustainable way. We Filipinos, actually. Um, our problem is not emissions. We are not a big part of the emissions problem. Maybe in terms of like consumption, consumption patterns, in terms of the plastics that we throw away and all that, yes, that we can change a lot there. But in terms of like carbon emissions, which is the single biggest factor, in sustainability right now, nothing else comes close. Carbon emissions, we are not at fault here, guys, right? We should not be looking at how the Americans are living, because that will mean worse,
Mm.
right? We should actually be trying to say, okay, we actually have a very sustainable lifestyle, but how do we make them better? How do we make our lifestyles better? Because of obviously our lifestyles sometimes are unbearable for a lot, for a lot
Mhm.
of people, for a big part of our population, it's unbearable, right? Because the problem is we are living in a very dense urban condition without the proper urban amenities and
Mm.
facilities,
Mm.
right? Why is it that Filipinos, we put everything on the sidewalk, right? If you go through Tondo, I always bring my friends there. We walk there. You'll see a karaoke bar, you'll see an arcade machine, you see people playing PlayStation on the street with, they put the coins there, right? And then
Oh,
Mhm.
you have chicken coops, you have dog houses, you have like cats tied up there, and then you have the small potted plants and whatever. You will find anything you want, from commercial, retail, residential, whatever. Everything is in the sidewalk, right?
yeah.
And feeling natin, the sidewalk is ours. Kasi nasa harap ng bahay ko eh.
Oh.
Mhm.
Di ba? So sobra, if someone wants to take away 1 square meter of that, patayan na.
Mm.
Right? Pero we don't care about the plaza. We have no attachment to it. We don't care about the park, about the library. Nasa atin din naman yun ah. Di ba? Don't the public buildings belong to us? They do. Di ba? Our museums belong to us. Aroseros Forest Parks belongs to every Manileño.
Mhm.
But where's the care or concern for that? Wala eh. Kasi we do not see, parang sa atin kasi, sa boss yan eh. Meaning the haciendero, the whatever, the government,
Oh, oh,
we
yeah.
don't see ourselves as part of the government, which we are. In a democracy, the people are an essential part of government. And that's why I always say, like, we have to build a better and stronger citizenry, because our sense of citizenhood is not so strong as a people,
Mhm.
and well, anyway, what I'm trying to say is that our perception of public space only extends to our front yard. So the idea is we have to lengthen this. We have to, like, encourage people to actually see public space as part of their life, And that's how you make density livable. Because you ha- in the city you have, for example, lang, let's say you have the botanical garden, you have a park, you have a library, you have a museum. Bakit? Gano'ng kalaki ba yung bahay mo na meron kang lahat niyan? Di ba? How few of us are blessed enough to have all of that in our own homes? I would say not even everyone in the villages.
Mhm.
Probably no one. No one
Mhm.
has access to like the most amazing art that you can find in a museum. Maybe if we have media tech centers and functional libraries, for some reason we don't. But I mean, if we had functional libraries and all that, um, these are all things that are benefits of living in a city. They're urban amenities. And sometimes we forget that they belong to us, right? They don't belong to the government. The
Mhm.
government owns nothing,
Mhm.
right? The people own these facilities. And so I think we have to refocus, emphasize these things for us to be able to make our lifestyle sustainable, our kind of living, our density sustainable, right? It's not about sending people out to the end of Laguna or wherever you want to send all these people and then start building small houses there and ask them to commute 4 hours every day to
True.
and from work. That's never going to be a sustainable lifestyle, right? So, I mean, we have to start, reinvesting in our city because honestly, we only have one major city in this country. Sorry, Cebu, but Cavite is bigger than Cebu. Cavite has a bigger economy than Cebu. So, Queen City of the South. I mean, I am happy that if they can develop another city there, fine, so be it. But in terms of scale and scope, we have no comparable secondary city to Metro Manila. And so if we let Metro Manila go to the dogs as our president wants, what will happen to us?
Mhm.
Well, we have to fight for our city also, especially us architects. We're the main custodians of our built environment. Sino pa ba? Diba? Sino pa ba yung lumaki at, you know, at nakakaintindi sa city natin kung di tayo.
Tama.
So I think we have to be ambassadors of this. Like I always tell my guys in the office, or when I was still teaching UST and UP, I always tell my guys, do not complain about the lack of interest in people in architecture. Because how many people have you talked to today about architecture na hindi architect? Kasi hindi nila naintindihan, kasi bored din, hindi sila interesado, then make them interested. Kaya ka nga bankero, di ba? Lalo na kayo.
Yon.
Di ba?
Yan.
That's why we have to know how to tell stories, di ba? Kailangan may konting
Exactly.
karimyo, di ba? So, yun,
Tama.
anyway.
May delivery. May
Yes.
Mm.
delivery. Yan. Kaya, yun. Pero yun, going back lang doon sa sinabi ni William na about public spaces. I think, it's not that we forgot about those public spaces. For me personally, it's just that I think we didn't know na we have a stake in those public areas.
Mhm.
Parang gano'n, eh, 'no? Parang hindi naman tayo pinalaki na yun nga, sabi ni William sa bakod lang, ito lang, ta's labas ka ng konti sa sidewalk, ayan. Yun yung community, eh, yung nasa street, eh, 'di ba? Like you grew up in, eh, parang ito na yung park ko, yung kalye. Never naman sa utak ko na punta ako ng park para maglaro ako or ano, 'di ba? So, I guess it's really part of that, culture that we need
Actually,
to create.
that's one of the things um, I want to challenge you guys in
Okay?
STC, right? You're all
Game.
young architects, energetic, right? Energetic tayong lahat. Okay, we're young, we want to
Yak
make
tayo.
change happen. We want to build a
Yeah.
better city.
Yep.
So, why don't you adopt a public space this year or the next, or every year, adopt one public space, figure out a way to make this space relevant and work. Right. So I'll give you an example. Right, we're building right now the River Lane. It's a pedestrian bridge we're building across the Pasig River. Imagine that the Pasig River bisects the entirety of Metro Manila. There is not one single pedestrian bridge right now. So we're building this bridge. It's under construction right now. My hope is that we as an office can adopt this pedestrian bridge and figure out a way to properly reintroduce Manileños to crossing the Pasig River on foot. You know, we want to introduce programs and activities. The hope, syempre, is that, of course, una, party-party muna, Pilipino, mahilig tayo sa
Naman.
Arktoberfest, di ba? So, yun talaga tayo eh.
Naman.
Una sa saya-saya muna, di ba? So, parang,
Yes.
but then people realize na parang, okay, maybe I can cross the street, cross the river on foot. I don't have to take a jeepney, go around, take another jeepney, whatever. Um, so, okay, we want to slowly reintroduce to them this idea of being able to rely on their own personal mobility. So yeah, that's one of the projects I'm really looking forward to actually, and hopefully, can make a difference. But yeah, that's what I'm telling. Like, why don't you guys do things like that? But I always
Yan.
tell my own chapter kasi medyo matanda na kami. So,
Okay.
but I always tell the guys naman they should do things like that, but older people. Um,
Yan.
but architects can make things happen. I mean, you guys were at Anthology, right? When we started Anthology, when did we start Anthology? 5 years ago or so, I think. 5, 6 years
I
ago.
think 16. 16.
2016, yeah. Okay, so yeah, we've had five now. So yeah, 2016 probably. So anyway, when we started Anthology, it was just, you have to imagine we did that in 2 weeks. So I
Wow.
was in Intramuros sitting by the bookstop, and then I said, "Man, I'm doing all these things. We're inviting even some national artists, some authors to give talks and all that. We have art festival, whatever, book festival. Paano naman yung architecture? Di ba? Ang dami, music festival ka, may art festival ka. Paano
Mm.
tayo? Di ba?
Tama.
So how do you expect people to appreciate architecture kung tayo ngang mga arkitekto, di natin sinaselebrate yung archi? So immediately when I went home, that was a weekend, I said 2 weeks from now, when Monday when I got to the office, I told my guys 2 weeks from now, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do an architecture festival. And then we're gonna
Wow.
invite all our friends, have them over, etc. Bahala na. The first one was actually free. We've always wanted the anthology to be free to the public. Um, yeah, so everything was okay. Hopefully, we get a good crowd. And then, okay
Yan.
naman. Positive naman yung vibes. So after that, every year slowly it grew, became bigger and bigger. I think now most of the real architects in the region, they actually know what anthology is. They actually appreciate it. Next year, I will not be putting any CPD points anymore in anthology. I think it's a hard decision for me, but I think I've already unilaterally decided that internally, actually, inside myself, that I don't want people to be going to anthology for any other reason than they love architecture.
The
That's it.
pleasure of going there.
Yeah, it's really about, minsan ka na nga lang maging arkitekto. Di ba? Maybe the other times, the rest of the year, seryoso ka, kailangan natin magtrabaho,
Ah,
hanap buhay. Di ba?
yeah.
Pero I think for that one weekend, laro-laro lang tayo. Let's just enjoy architecture in a purer form, hopefully. And so, yeah, those are things that we feel like architects can do. Like this one, right?
Oh. Yeah.
Kaya nga nandito tayo because we feel like there's a message that we can share. There are ideas that we want people to be able to, maybe learn from each other.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and you never know who's watching, who might need to hear what you're saying. Pero yun, Pres, kung nanonood ka, Presidente, yan na, may bago na tayong project for next year. Adopt a public space. Di ba? Ayan. Si Tams yata may yan eh. Parang mahaba listahan ng question ni Tams.
Oh, mahaba na listahan ng question ko. So, okay. Direct, pwede yung kay J. Paras. Mr. J. Paras. How will you address the rising level due to climate change? I think this one is for the Horizon Manila.
Yeah. You have to note that the rise in sea level na in terms of like end of the world, we're talking about inches lang.
Mm-hmm.
The worst case forecast, 100 years, etc. We're talking about inches.
Talaga ba? Hindi ba
We're at,
meters?
if it goes up 2 meters, we're dead basically.
Mm.
So right now the forecast is like we're talking about inches. I think it's like something like 10, 20 inches, something like that. But what if it goes up 2 meters or so? We're actually pretty much in trouble.
Kaput. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, Horizon Manila is about 4 to 5 meters above sea level.
Oh, wow.
Depends on the area of the Manila itself, Manila proper, I think is about, like I said, about, I think if I'm not mistaken, 3 meters or less above sea level. So, how do we deal with rising sea? Lubog na yung Manila, nandiyan pa kami.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lubog na yung
So
Manila,
that,
nag-aaral pa ako sa UST noon eh, ganyan.
yeah. Parang ganyan, di ba? Parang nung Ondoy, nasa Legazpi ako, wala na yung Manila, di ko
Wala na.
napansin eh. No, but I
Diba?
mean,
Hindi ko
kidding
yung,
aside,
nagtataka ako yung
yeah.
tuition fee, walang kasamang banana boat, ganyan.
Walang transportation, di ba? But no, so we're higher than Manila. Um, we're higher than the current reclamation sites along Wall of Asia, etc. So yeah, that's how we plan to deal with it.
Yeah, of course, of course. That's why we are an architect, so we plan for the future.
Plan
Yeah,
for
Real
it.
and we
estate,
shouldn't
actually.
subscribe to this idea. Have you guys been to Tacloban?
Ako never.
Yes, I have been, I
Okay.
have been.
Okay, if you see the reaction towards Yolanda, it was like, okay, send everyone up the mountains, relocate them there, and they're all empty. Nakakaawa yung relocation sites doon. People are not built to live in the mountains. We will, where is human settlement? Where does human
Usually where
settlement
the,
happen?
Rivers,
where the water
body of
is.
water.
Right? By the water. It will not change. That's who we are as a species, diba? We just have to be able to deal with, if ever that we are not smart enough to be able to stop the rising sea levels, then we just have to learn more from the Dutch.
Yeah, floating
And
houses.
our building contractors is Yanu. They're actually a Belgian firm. I think they're Dutch Belgian. So yeah, but at the end of the day, we just have to learn better ways and technologies in terms of like how we can deal with rising sea waters.
Yun. So, sana nasagot yung tanong ni Jay.
Yes, and
Meron
then
pa
from
ba?
another one, I think this one is about your toy collection. From Rolando
Correct.
Del Castillo. Okay, direct. Uh, yeah. How about model kits? Are you collecting or does your hobby include model kits?
I have a very sad experience with model kits. My dad is a bit older than me. My dad's about 40 something when he had me already. So when I was a kid, every time I would buy a model kit and ask my dad to help me, um, old guy that he is, no instructions, just glue everything together. And then like
Oh!
and I'm always going like, but dad, there's like so many extra parts. I know those are just like redundant parts not needed. um, I have a few kits. I think I have one of the Millennium Falcon, Starfighter, mostly ships. I think. I actually have a collection of like a few ships outside. I think I have some of the USS Enterprise. Those kind of things. But they're not my primary, trust in collecting. Most of my toys are statues actually. They're resin statues. So I like kasi having them in a more dynamic pose versus an action figure where, okay, action figures are posable and you can see these on top their action
Yeah, yeah,
figures.
ganda eh. No?
Pero may kulang eh. May kulang eh. The pose is not, there's a loss of dynamism in the pose kasi. So I
Figures.
always try to do statues as much as I can.
Yeah. Kasi dito mga kailangan mo i-consider yung posable joints eh, no? Sculpture
Yeah,
can
yeah. There's
be distorted a little bit. Okay pa din.
Exactly. Parang Champectib.
Mm.
Champektibo. Closer to ano
Yun
eh,
lang.
parang comic books poses yung sculptures. Not necessarily anatomically, yung mga limitations. Ako,
Yes.
ayan William, sumagot na yung presidente namin.
Mm.
Challenge
Looking
accepted.
forward to seeing that next year, huh?
Ayan, tatlong beses natin i-invite si
Hindi, hindi tayo i-invite niya sa anthology. Ipe-present
Oo,
niya.
Okay,
tama.
sige, sige.
Patay tayo diyan. Mukhang pero good challenge to take on.
Okay. Moving
Oo.
on for the next question from Rolando del Castillo again. I think he's about to ask your more on the design strategies that you are actually doing. Do you have a plan to collect water and store it in large areas that can act like water silos for the horizon? Water that can be filtered, treated, or for non-domestic purposes, for example, fire source for fire trucks. It can be spaced and tapped with fire hydrants.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier. So what we have in Horizon, we actually have a 30-meter wide. So imagine 30 meters wide, um, 4-kilometer long canal that bisects the entirety of the development. So this will also, of course, act as a freshwater reservoir for one. We have two 1 kilometer wide, 1 kilometer long, 120-meter wide waterways that we want to turn into something like the Marina Barrage as a reservoir. Then on each island we have like how do you even call them? They're not lakes, but they're kind of like water silos actually. But they're in the form of water gardens, and so basically we have these like water collectors on each island also to further distribute water work. And then primarily the barrage will at the end, of course, there's a power generating part of it, and that in turn is meant to power a desalination plant to augment the capacity of the all these features. And the idea is that this will allow us to be self-sufficient in terms of water, and especially in the beginning, much more to maybe even supply back to the city.
Nice. Okay, I have a follow-up question to that. It might be a long-winded answer, pero I'm just gonna ask it. When a project like this comes in your desk, how do you begin to choose the strategies you implement? Like let's say you said na may mga waterways ganyan. Is there a parang ano ba tawag doon?
Yeah, basically you're doing something.
Elimination or like you said
Sorry, you're
kanina,
talking at the same time.
sorry.
Sorry, sorry.
Uh
Ikaw muna.
ayun, like yung kanina, sabi mo there's a storytelling aspect for an architect, no? How did you integrate that storytelling aspect of the design in your solution right now? Kasi I said you had waterways, di ba? Then you have a water silo. Is that part of a bigger story na more on the
Yeah.
emotional side of presenting?
So when at least for this project, no, I think me personally, kasi when I start with the project, I'm a very I always try to get the context and in well, my book, right, the purpose, so not use context, the purpose of each project, and try
Mhm.
to make the intent, of each architect of the architect very evident. So what is my purpose for this project? Why am I doing this? And that takes me a long time. Sometimes that takes me days, maybe even for some projects where I can't find the answer, maybe more than a week or weeks. But to really find, wala ang kwenta in drawing. The drawings, I just ask my guys, you do your things first, whatever, I don't care. But me internally, I always work on that. Like, what is my purpose for doing this project? And then once I figure out my purpose, then I can tell my story, right? And then I will try to formulate my ideas based on this, like how like the concept behind it, and try to come up with like of course strategies first, and then okay, this is what we should do, this is how we should do, and then Um, the way this works for Horizon is that it was two pronged. Okay, so one of the first things that I wanted to be able to do was we wanted to be able to build communities.
Okay.
I think in terms of master planning, that's really how I think. We want to build a community. I'm not looking to build a city where you have, I mean, when you have a master planning project like this, they come to you, they say, oh, I want a stadium here, I want a cruise
Okay.
terminal here, I want a monorail that goes around the entire island, all those things, right? Those are the things that they say. Then I want landmarks, icons, all these like.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me the focus was okay. I want to build communities, and how do I build communities? So my first question actually was, what is a community? Right? And I think for me internally, the answer was a community is a group of people um, built around a common shared experience, and then this community has a definable identity. It has a certain defined character. And so I figured, okay, so how do I then, turn this idea into architecture? That's the crucial step eh. Tayong architects, magaling tayo magkwento eh. Di ba? And then magaling din
Yes.
tayo mag-drawing. But how do you make the kwento into the drawing? Okay, so how do you define a community, right? How do you define? You define it by, let's say I have a community here and another one here. You
Mm-hmm.
define it by the boundaries, by the borders that you have between them. Diba? The
Okay.
boundaries that you have in between each community serve to define the community itself.
Mm-hmm.
Diba? Because now there is like, okay, dito kami sa ganyan, sa barangay 244, ganyan kami. Sa
Mm-hmm.
245, ganyan sila eh. So then
Mm-hmm.
you are defining yourself eh. Diba? Parang
Mm-hmm.
self, ano siya eh, self-definition siya eh. The other idea is that how do you have shared experiences? Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have, if you want to grow a community, syempre simula tayo, scratch, di ba? From nothing, tabla rasa tayo. So you grow a community by having, like with all Filipino towns and cities, a piazza, right? The public space, the public buildings. Now, hopefully the experiences that the residents will have, in terms of like, okay, why did you choose to live near the museum? Because you love art, and all these things, and you have those like small art facilities and then the piazza that gears toward that. Then we share this experience, as a community. And
Mm-hmm.
that is what ties us together. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's how we started the idea of like, okay, this being able to have these like 28 different communities that importante na bawat isa dito may identity. Hindi pwedeng kasi
Wow.
lang, ito, community na siya kasi tinawag natin community. No, we were very particular that each of these had its own identity. And then, okay, so we have that, right? But then we're doing a master plan. What ties the master plan together? It should, for me, it's not about, okay, this is the main road, this is the loop road, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This is or about zoning. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think master planning is about that. I think what
Mm-hmm.
is a master plan, especially in this scale? A master plan is a human settlement.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started to imagine the different land forms that allow for human settlement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do we settle as a people? We settle around the river. We settle by the bay. We settle in a very protected valley. We settle in plateaus. So these are the different land forms that allow for human settlement. And so we, of course, we did different schemes of like the land patterns that we wanted, and
Mm-hmm.
we ended up with this like valley canal park that acts as a valley in the middle of the development. And so the idea is that even if you have a blank canvas, right,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to create kind of like a palimpsest where you have layers of information and ideas that
Mm-hmm.
together make up, this development. It
Mm-hmm.
should not just be one layer. Okay, dito residential, dito commercial,
Uh,
dito,
yeah. Oh.
then tapos ka na, rendering na
Oh.
lang. Hindi eh.
Oh.
You have to have layers, right? There are layers to this, and so each idea is a layer,
Mm-hmm.
and the richness no happens in the interaction in between these different layers.
Mm-hmm.
For example, how would um let's say you're building this or building a medical, kasi there's like a community there. The idea is that it's for independent living,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's by a park, and then so okay, so then that defines it, the landscape, the landform, and its location,
Mm-hmm.
and the identity of this community defines what kind of buildings are inside. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's how we wanted to build the narrative. And of course, then then when you put them together, there are additional synergies and benefits that come around where you can. Okay, so what is the advantage of having 28 different cities or 28 different barangays
Community.
versus one top level master plan? Laging may interesting sa kabilang kanto. Laging may
Mm-hmm.
happening, di ba?
Mm-hmm.
For let every So we had points of interest strung along the entire development, and they're never more than about a 5-minute walk away from each other. So this encourages you to walk kasi hindi ka maboboard eh. Hindi yung parang kung
Tama.
nasa HDB tayo sa Singapore, wala kang makita. So pag naglalakad ka, when you're walking, laging doon may ganyan, no? Doon may
Mm.
ganito. So
Mm.
you're walking towards something lagi.
Mm-hmm.
And this encourages us to explore, to visit. And then,
Mm-hmm.
syempre, of course, the canal park itself. This facilitates, this exchange or this like walking throughout the entirety of the development. Diba? And then, of course, the other urban features they help and whatnot. But yeah, that was the first idea. That was the main gist. I actually posted the video of it, of me sketching it out there. It's actually a real video that I said like, okay, this time I want to like do a recording of it. So and then because of
Nice.
course we did it in like hyper speed or whatever, but then it was really the sketching process of how we came up with the idea. And but of course, like I said, before I start sketching, I've always internalized the idea pretty much. Like, I work that way. I have a notebook with me all the time. I've probably like finished like a whole bunch of them already, and then I'm sure you guys see your sketches also, Archie. So I always
Choose.
like, yeah. Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I always sketch down my thoughts, and then so once I actually put things on paper, medyo I
Yeah.
have an idea already where I'm going with things.
Agree. And it's a good point you make kasi these days parang sketching is being parang nawawala na yung talent na sketching sa mga bata, especially yung mga nasasanay na sa computers, 'di ba? Parang minsan, sige sketch mo nga 'to. Nahiya sila wala nang confidence sa
Yeah. Alam nyo ba sa
So,
office namin, bawal lapis?
talaga? Anong lang marker, pens?
Yeah, tech pen, yeah, pens, markers. No, the idea is this, no. Arkitekto ka, di ba? So mahilig ka mag-drawing. Magaling ka mag-drawing, di ba? So pag
Mm.
mali ka, di ulitin mo, bakit mo kailangan burahin?
No erasures.
Di ba? Ulit lang, trace over.
Yeah.
Marami ng papel eh.
Yun, yeah.
Di ba?
Yan.
So, I mean, of course, like, it's not really strictly enforced naman. I mean, pero sa harap ko, I don't allow them to
Bawal.
draw.
Bawal. Sharpie lang parate.
So, you make your mistake, then you draw again.
Actually,
I think
good
that's
practice.
really, yeah. I mean, of course, when you're trying to draw a masterpiece, maybe or whatever, fine, you can use paint. But when you're sketching, free-form sketching, and trying to formulate ideas, I think it's important to also be thinking with pen and paper. Iba kasi yung hagod eh.
Iba. Iba yung may kagat yung yung pen sa paper. Iba. Kaya yung ibang tao ayaw din mag-sketch iPad kasi glass yung surface.
Hindi ko talaga kaya eh. I keep trying, but it's just for annotation. It's just for annotation for me. I annotate like check work, but yung idea formulation, it doesn't happen for me.
There's something yung tactility ng manual sketching straight from your brain.
Yung scratching ng pen on paper, yes. I need the feel of that. Yung resistance.
Mahirap i-replicate yan with technology right now. Ayun. So siguro couple more questions. Medyo overtime na tayo.
For the last question. Coming from our
pero sayang.
Yeah, yeah,
Sige,
yeah.
go.
Chill, chill. Okay.
Yeah. For our last question coming from Baste, of course. How do you find time and motivation to do concepts and insights outside your main practice?
Sorry, this is a strange question because I don't have a life outside my practice. I I basically just, but I think what Basta is trying to ask, like, I inspire where does inspiration come from? Where do we get our ideas? I think for me, largely it comes from people. It really comes from watching people, interacting with them, being able to understand their thoughts, and having a certain empathy for how people live and their fears.
Mm.
I'll give you an example when we were doing the emergency quarantine facilities, right?
Mhm.
I think one of the reasons, I think, especially when we were starting, you have to remember this was March and April and May. Everyone was a bit frightened, diba? This was new. Hindi natin alam what we were dealing with. I
Mhm.
think one of the police officers I talked to, he was saying like, it's not what you guys are doing, but the mere fact that you're doing something and
Mhm.
showing us that you can actually act upon this. That's the more important part. And so what I'm trying to say is that, as an example, no, we were seeing that people were afraid of going to those
Yes.
mega facilities, right? Because, I mean, takot ka na nga, hindi mo na nga alam ano mangyayari sa'yo, papadala ka pa
Yep.
sa dulo ng mundo.
Yep.
Hindi talaga eh, di ba? It does not
Yep.
work eh. So,
Yep.
that's why we realized that we wanted to build more localized facilities that, and even now, I think they're the ones that are being used eh,
Mm.
primarily, that they're more local. Diba? There were plans to build like these so-called facilities in Bulacan, in Clark, whatever. Never naman nagamit eh. Because
Mm.
people actually want to be where they belong. You
Mm.
cannot relocate people, especially sick people, when they're scared, they're
Yes.
tired, they don't know what's
Yes.
going on.
Yes.
So I think it's about being able to understand and empathize with people who are more vulnerable, and being able to observe and project their wants and needs. I think that's
Mhm.
very important for architecture. And I always ask myself like the question of like how people will react to certain, to our work, actually,
Mhm.
how they will use them, how it will, what kind of impact it will have in their lives. I think that's really my parang my north star, if you may, when I come up with work.
Mhm. Nice, nice. Saka ano, I think Paste was actually, we were talking about this before you came in eh. Parang sinasabi kasi ni Paste, si William T, ang dami-dami ng project, ang dami ng ginagawa. Nakakapagsulat pa ng article. So,
Dami nangyayari, ganyan.
saan niya kinukuha yung oras
Actually,
niya?
you know, that's been a question naman talaga. That, and I always tried, like when I was teaching kasi as late as last year.
Okay.
And I always tell my students, if I watch more YouTube videos about architecture than you're in deep shit, man.
Yeah.
Right? Because I have 100% practice. I'm doing so much work, and yet I can find time. Ikaw, anime lang pinapanood mo.
Netflix.
'Di ba? So, oh, 'di ba? I think that just shows how much more focus or dedication that one person can give towards architecture.
Mm.
I think we forget that a lot of times. I think it's about your enjoyment. Eh. If you
Mm.
enjoy architecture,
Mm.
it's not a chore. It's not a job.
Mm.
Eh. Even this, for me, this is fun, right? And I think
Okay.
I have fun talking about architecture. I enjoy it.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
it's really a part of me. I
Mm.
would say over the past few days, I've spent probably at least 2 hours a day watching a YouTube video about architecture, because I'm watching a certain person right now.
Mm.
So I think that's really something that we can absorb as an architect. Na enjoy natin, let's choose the part of architecture we like. Marami kasing klaseng architect eh, di ba? Marami
Yes.
din klaseng architecture. I mean, you might enjoy sketching, you might
Mm.
enjoy modeling, you might enjoy, whatever part. Advocacy is a part of architecture. Like I said, but like gathering, community gathering.
Mhm.
Um, there are so many aspects of architecture that we ourselves can work on. It can be with technology and material.
Mhm.
That you do not have to be forced to do the things you do not like.
Mm.
There are so many things that you can choose to enjoy, as an architect, and put much more of your, time and effort on, I think. And then you don't realize that you're actually spending so much more time than everyone else, but you're having the time of your life. I think
Exactly.
that comes from the geek side of me, because
Mhm.
I realized early on, like, so I geek out about superheroes and spend hours and hours just reading comic books and stuff, right? If you can do that for, superheroes, or I'm sure NBA, marami finals na bukas ulit, di ba?
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
kung memorize mo lahat ng basketball player sa Miami Heat, bakit di mo memorize lahat ng architect na nanalo ng Pritzker Prize?
Mm. Mm.
Tama.
There must be something there sa question na yun, di ba?
There was, I think
Oh.
one of my mentors kasi told me that very early on. Sabi niya, you kids, you can always tell me who your favorite basketball players are, or what your favorite movies are, and yet you can't tell me who your favorite architect is, or what your favorite building is. So ano ka ba, basketball player o arkitekto? So I think that's really the core difference there.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I had an experience din sa ganyan. I was surprised. Parang, wala ka bang parang ina-idolize na, kasi student kausap ko, ganyan. Asking,
Yeah,
advice, yung ganyan, how to develop yung ganyan, design. Sabi ko, wala ka bang favorite na architect? Ang dami-dami information now online. Parang you can almost watch their whole lives sa YouTube, sa ganyan. Kung ano na lang pinapanood mo kasi. 'Di ba? Pero I mean, like you said, it's all about enjoyment. I think it's gonna
mm,
be phases in your life, no? Na parang, ito na-enjoy ko
yeah,
ngayon. Siguro at a certain level, maturity hits us, all of us differently. So, parang gano'n lang
exactly.
ang tinitingnan ko. Pero sabi ko, at least, I'm gonna nudge you in the right direction. If you spend 5 hours on YouTube, you might want to spend 2 hours on watching architecture or sketching or whatnot. Or ganyan. Tsaka yun nga, yung sabi mo rin, you don't really live for the weekends. Yun ang ano. Kasi di ba yung
Yeah.
iba parang, Monday na naman, di ba? Pero
Oh, yeah.
when you know what you're doing, Monday is my favorite day. I hate Fridays, parang pag ganun di ba?
Uh,
Yeah. Yun.
and I think also like everything blends together. You don't feel time. I actually, aside from architectural deadlines for the office, I don't really have a good grasp of time. Eh. Like, to give you a good example, I think next week and October 17, I committed to 3 talks in one day, and
Oh
I
my
was like,
God.
I was like today trying to figure out, okay, how do I parse the timeline for this? Um, but I'm not very good with time. Pero we can't be good at everything.
Yes.
I think we all are with time. Feeling ko lang, ha?
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, true, true.
Pero yeah. Yeah. Yun, speaking of time,
Yeah.
eh,
We
I
lost
don't know
our.
about you guys, pero we're enjoying this conversation with you. But we don't wanna, impose too much na we keep you from whatever you need to do after this. Ayan, so yan, may mga nagko-comments na nagpapasalamat.
Yeah, it's
Si
always
Rod,
good to
yeah.
hear thoughts. Kiawit. I think one of the guys who worked on us for the EQF was engineer Dan Kiawit. No, I'm not sure if they're related. But he was one of the key persons in the quarantine facilities that we built.
Si,
And Birdie.
si Bernie.
But I think the hope is that and there's an easy win for all of us here. Wala, yeah, in terms of like
Mm,
doing time for spending time on architecture.
mm,
Kahit pagbabarkada pwedeng architecture. Diba? Like I said, pwede kang magkwento. Diba? Marami nga. Ikaw, ikaw nga yung bankero pag, di ba, pag ganun. So I think, we need to advocate for architecture, um, even to our friends who are not. And if they don't know what architecture is, then that's the perfect opportunity to tell
Yes,
them about it. Diba?
agree. 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 Ako ano lang, personal experience ko, I have a long-term friends, high school, ganyan. Whenever we travel out, kami ni misis kasi parang may architect. Kami yung
Mm.
cheapest travelers to be with. Kasi we just walk around, look at building, ay, ganda ng building, and then we talk about it. Tapos sila parang, ganun pala. Tapos after a while, pagka nagta-travel sila on their own or ibang friends na kasama, parang sabi niya, na-miss na namin kayo kasi yung mga kasama namin, yung mga trip, yung gustong kumain sa ganito, yung gustong kumain sa ganyan. Di ba parang, kami cheap travelers, kami yung grouting lang ng floor, yung termination lang nung floor drain. Parang, ang galing dito. Kuya, kasi punta ka sa Japan, everything is aligned, di ba? Parang,
Yes, yes.
inisip pa nila yan. Dito, kung ano tumama, bahala na, putulin nyo, basta malinis. Ganyan. Di ba? So I think in those small things, I think we all do it naman. We just don't really, we're not really aware of us doing it.
Mm.
Pero I think at a certain level, mapupuno din yung friends natin. Ito na naman si Archie, tinitingnan na naman yung ilaw, yung placing ng switch.
At least
yung
alam
mga
nila kanino sila pupunta pag kailangan nila ng arkitekto.
Yeah. Yun na nga. So, nagkataon, starting our practice. Oh, kailangan ng bahay.
Di
Oh,
ba?
RT. So, yun. Yeah. So, those small things, those small examples. I think you're right. You're right. A little bit of, it should come naturally din kasi. Kasi when you come off naman na parang nagle-lecture ka, di ba? Na parang, this building was designed by ganyan, and ganun din.
Tsaka
Di
kahit
ba?
ako di ko maalala yun eh.
Ganun ba?
Hindi ko maalala yun. I
And
think
then,
my appreciation for architecture, casual talaga eh. It's very casual. I don't think I ever remembered anything na tinuro sa akin in a classroom.
oh, wow.
But outside the classroom interactions with my mentors, those are the things I actually really remember until now.
Oh, talking about mentors. Who was your like biggest mentor for you that meant the most? And what did he say to you na naaalala mo hanggang ngayon?
Well, I always call him my mentor. I used to work with architect Norman Wanya from San Carlos University. He's a history of architecture guy. And my main frustration with art history in this country is that it tends to end just before it gets interesting, right? We never talk about modernism and all the precursors to that, and what happened after. Basically, what happened after the Gothic or whatever. We kind of just stop with the Crystal Palace and that's it. I when we worked together for I think a few months, I think because we were living together in the same place also. So parang
Mm,
you have someone to talk to about architecture every day that can actually talk to you for hours, even until now when we sit together and talk. He's one of the few people I can actually sit down with and talk to about architecture for hours
mhm,
and hours, and really the depth of interest is there, and I think that's very important. um I think it's very important for us to have mentors who can show us how we can appreciate architecture, how we can build, not to tell us what to do, but to show us
mhm,
how to come up with our own form of thinking, how
mhm,
to compose our thoughts,
mhm,
show us, the history of how things are and why they are the way they are. I think that's very relevant for me. And and like I said, he was the one who told me who's your favorite basketball player, and that stuck to me.
okay.
Yeah, that stuck to me. So every interview I do, I actually do that. I
Oh, wow.
always
Oh,
ask
yeah,
them,
the mga
who's your favorite architect? If
yan,
your
yung mga
answer is
dami.
Zaha or Frank Lloyd Wright, then man, you're just not there yet.
Yeah, mga mga default, kasi hindi naman sa ano, pero I mean, they're really popular
I mean, they're
kasi.
good. They're masters.
So,
They're masters,
yeah.
right? But I mean, at the end of the day, my hope is that you have, after 5 years of architecture school, that you have a deeper, or at least a much stronger understanding or grasp of architecture as a whole. I
Mm,
think than what a normal person might know.
mm, yeah, I agree. Agree. So talking about favorite architects, do you have any?
I have a lot of favorite
Ah,
architects. I think I have a lot in terms of like obsessions and the kind of architecture I actually like and appreciate. But I tend more towards individual buildings than practices, and more about the process of architecture. I always admire having a certain process in how architecture is done. I think that's really
mhm,
more my way of thinking.
mhm, mhm. I
But
think it also
it's im-
shows that, yeah,
it's
sorry.
important that we don't develop stylistic tendencies, especially before we have a strong enough sensibility as an architect. Like I myself, I do not think I am there yet. I don't feel like I've developed, you know, a strong enough sensibility to say that okay, this is really the kind of architecture I want to do. I'm still exploring. I'm still building. I mean, for the last few years, I think there is a certain direction I've been heading towards as an architect, but I feel like I'm still exploring. And
Mhm,
so I think that's important for every architect to realize that even when you're still in school, you're
mhm,
already starting towards, this, search for your own sensibilities. And it's not just about drawings or, design or making something nice or look good.
mhm,
There has to be a direction.
mhm,
I think that is what we miss in our current architectural training, especially in our
mhm,
universities, where we
mhm.
do not have strong enough mentors or professors that we can emulate. Kasi when you're
Mm.
young, that's the most you can do eh, di ba? I want
Yeah,
to be like this, I want to be
yeah.
like that. Eh
Yep,
kung wala kang role model, paano na?
yep.
Di ba? So, sinong role model natin? Si Kobe. Parang,
Yeah.
yun yung nangyayari eh, di ba? So, I think that's something that we have to look forward to. I always also say like if you check the Instagram accounts of most architects, there probably are more movie actors or basketball players than there are architects. Um, I mean the young architecture students. But
Mm,
so that's sad. That's sad. I think if there is something that you should be trying to follow, um, it should you should be emulating, or not, it's not emulating, but like trying to observe how certain architects are and understanding the way they do things, because that
mhm.
helps you into forming your own understanding also of architecture. Um,
Agree.
our library consists of very few coffee table picture books
Mm,
because we want to consume ideas and not photos. Same
mm,
goes with, like I said, with YouTube or Instagram. We don't follow top 10 museums of the world. No, you don't do that. Eh. You don't. It does not teach you about architecture. It's a travelogue, or it
mm,
teaches you very shallow introductory architecture. Maybe
mhm,
you watch a top 10 and say, okay, this is the one I like. Then you watch a 20 or half hour documentary about that museum. Then you try to figure out who's the architect, what
mm,
other works they've done, why do they do work this way. You
mm,
watch their lectures, you learn about them.
mm.
Then you know an architect. Then you start, that's the rabbit hole. That's how you should
The rabbit
think.
hole.
It's not like, but you should be able to go down that rabbit hole and really munch on it. So parang I think that's really how we develop our own sensibilities about architecture. And if you are not fortunate enough to have a mentor personally, at the very least find someone online.
Exactly. Exactly what we're doing here. Pero
Right. Ah,
pero like
well,
you
I
said,
mean, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, like you said, yung sa styles, 'di ba? Parang yung kasi parang it's so easy to Google or Pinterest styles, eh, 'di ba? Pag sinabi sa'yo ng client, gusto ko ng modern minimalist ganyan, oh,
Oh,
Pinterest ka kaagad, 'di ba? Pero like you said, yung thinking talaga behind. So whatever style you need to produce, but the basic principles, like you said, the basic sensibilities are there that is true to you. Like you said, kung sa'yo naman, it's more about streetscape, yung communities, ganyan. Not necessarily true for me or for Taps or for anybody who's watching. We all have different truths, but as long as it's true to you and you apply to that to your project, that's how you find your voice. Pero okay lang sa start, mag-kopya-kopya ka kunyari, just to
Oh
get the
yeah.
hang of it, 'di ba? Pero after a while, you have to find your own voice kasi otherwise you're just gonna be, you know, a
Yeah,
sort.
I don't think, that's how the Renaissance masters used to learn, right?
Exactly.
They would copy the work of previous masters until you
Yep.
get a good grasp of it, then you are able to
Yep.
do your own
Yes.
piece of art.
Yep.
And architecture works that way as well, if you, for lack of a better, go sketch, your favorite building. Then you will learn something about that building.
Hmm.
So, and if you can, let's say, build I don't know what you can build Ronchamp here. Go for it, as long as you build a good one. Huh?
Meron na ba?
Know what I mean? Like, the thing
Yeah,
is
yeah,
like,
agree.
making a good copy
Yep.
allows you to learn so much about how it works and why it's done that way.
Yep.
I think so. I really think so. And I've never been very particular about, this is a copy. This is,
Yeah.
I think that's why our work, we're pretty much an open book about what we do. I think we should be sharing ideas with each other actually.
Yeah. Agree. Pero I think yun din, no, yung like you said sa Masters, I think Picasso had the same story. Di ba? Picasso right now is parang modernist, ganyan. Pero if you see his earlier paintings, they're more, di ba, realistic, ganyan. Parang, this doesn't necessarily mean na hindi siya marunong. He just doesn't want to
Hmm.
do that type of, he just found his voice na
But then
modern.
that's when you start to appreciate his abstract art. Eh, when you see the sequence of how it got there. Kasi
Yep.
if you look at it like, ano ba to? And then, ang
Oo.
ganda daw, sabi nila art eh, pero bakit? So, but then when you see the actual sequence of, the thinking ba, of like how
Oh,
it became more and more abstracted, that's the beauty of it. And
the
it's the
process.
same with architecture. Minsan parang sabi mo, bakit sa magazine to ang simple lang naman ng building na to? Ano ba meron?
Mm.
Diba?
Yeah.
Pero when you see how it got there, then that's okay when you realize why it's an important piece of work.
Tama. Tama. The evolution, the distillation of the idea into the most basic truth or clearest form. Parang ganun. Ayun.
Yes.
Yun. Yun. Nako. Tamps. Ay, ito. Ano yan? May nagko-comment pa. Ang dami pa umahabol. Okay, you can from your former boss as a role model.
Yes,
Then
I'm
try to
still
explore
here.
out of it.
Yes, I think that's very important. Don't you guys think so? I think it's really important that you actually work for people you believe in. Much more even than believing in the project that you're working on. I think it's much more important that you believe in the person you're working for. Or else, why
Mm-hmm.
bother?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes,
know,
exactly.
the harsh reality is that architectural paychecks are so small anyway that you're better off in a call center. Right? So if you are not doing good, if you don't think you are in a good place or doing something that is relevant, then maybe you have to find somebody else to follow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Agree. Oh, yan. Si Sir Noy P. Si Sir Noy P, ano to eh, faculty to sa, ano eh, NU. Yan. Good
Elder,
conversation partner
elder.
talaga.
Ah,
Elder
yeah,
yan. Ano
yeah.
yan, siya sa mga founding members ng chapter namin. So, si Sir Noy P. Down to earth, hindi all about this project. Yan. Si Elois. Very informative, fun talk about architecture. Nakaka-inspire. Lel, magdodrawing na siya, oh.
Grabe, may iba yung OT ko si Eloy eh.
Pen on paper, Eloy, hindi digital.
Ah,
Pen on
hope to
paper.
see that. Hope to see that.
Yun. Ako, ano lang, last personal na to, personal question eh. Hindi. As designers, we all go through parang a block, di ba? Parang creative block. What do you do
Mhm.
to like get out of that rut?
Um, so there are strong blocks and there are weak blocks, right? But me, I tend to wander around. I tend to shift to another project. I tend to, I think sometimes you find things in a different place. So I think usually if I get stuck, I would work on another project. You know, I think walking helps for me. Walking kind of gets me thinking, and also if I really need to attack a project, and actually one of the first things I do is I break things down to its components,
Mhm.
um, or its first principles. What is a computer? Why do we have a computer? It's a thinking machine. It's a calculator. What is it, right? So I mean, what is it in its like purest form, and try
Mhm.
to rebuild it back up. And I
Okay.
think, and then of course inserting certain categories, certain requirements and all that. Then maybe when you build it back up, iba na siya.
Mm.
Well, this is
Mm.
different. This is interesting.
Mm.
Parang I think that's like model kit ba? Na may sobrang
Yeah.
pieces at the end of the day. Ay, hindi pala kailangan yun eh.
Nabuo ko
um,
din.
nabuo ko eh. Ay, nahalo ko yung dalawang set. Ay,
Okay lang.
anyway. Basta, dyan pa rin, lumabas pa rin ako eh.
Oo,
No, but I
oo, oo,
mean, like,
tama.
yeah, at the end of the day, that's how we do it. I would really break it down to its first principles. For example, like a shopping mall is a market. A market is a forum. It's a piazza. It's an open ground. So, like trace the history of a project, also how it came to be about this typology, attack the brief itself, break down the brief, break down the program, even the spaces in them. And yeah, and then try to figure out the main purpose of the project.
Nice.
So
Nice.
yeah, that's really how I kind of like try to get over
Nice.
that.
And piggybacking on that idea, so sabi ni William na when he needs to take a break, he takes a walk or go some other places na hindi yung workspace niya. That's actually one of the goals ng Arktoberfest is to have a different environment for architects to go to. Na siguro less restrictive than the workplace, and then talk to other architects, to other people, whoever who would want to come to the event and generate new ideas. Parang have that conversation. And maybe you talk to that one person and you see a different perspective. And then you come back to your workplace refreshed with a new perspective, with a new idea, something that would be a solution to your problem. So hindi na tayo puro inom
Actually,
dito. Pero sayang.
actually, that's basically what studio culture is about, right? When they
Mm,
say, when you hear studio culture and all those things, that's what studio culture is. Having a group of like-minded people who are actually interested in the same things, and attacking the same problem, and
mhm,
trying to, even the painters before, that's how, but they stay in a cafe or a studio, they're all
mm,
working their own paintings, but they're talking about the same ideas, sharing
mm.
these thoughts, and then that's how you build a culture of you know um, of progression, where you are actually moving, thinking. And so yeah, I think that, so what you're actually building here is also a studio in a lot of
Oh, so official studio tayo. Pero yeah, I think sa mga medyo
Senior
nahirapan pa
studio.
hindi pa mahirapan pang visualize yung closest or parang immediate memory or example that I remembered. Have you watched the movie Imitation Game? Hindi pa. Si Alan Turing with the with the what do you call this? Yung code breaking.
things. Yeah,
Kasi
yeah,
there
yeah, I
was
watch it. I watch it. It's a new one, right?
yeah, new one.
It's a
I
recent
remember
one.
yeah, recent. I remember a scene there kasi na parang they were working on the Enigma machine for the longest time. Nasa office ganyan. And then after a while they took a break. 'Di ba? They had a few beers doon sa bar ganyan. And then the interaction with a operator yata, a phone operator. That's where they got the idea on how to solve the Enigma. So parang yun, bigla silang tumakbo sa sa office studio ulit. Tapos yeah, alam nila kung anong gagawin. So creating those opportunities of innovation, interaction with other people, para to get you out of that default setting of workplace. Para ikaw din, open ka to new ideas. So, yon. Hopefully, through our stream, our Facebook stream, digitally. We hope na we have provided that for you tonight. On that note, William, we want to thank you for spending this Friday night with us.
Yeah,
Usapan
Friday
natin
pa lang
1 hour
yan.
lang, oh. Wala,
Yeah,
wala.
yeah, yeah. No
Usapan
worries.
natin 1 hour lang, pero we stretch it 2 hours. We thank you, William. It's been a pleasure talking to you. We would have want to stretch this throughout the night, pero we're gonna need more beers, I think.
Yeah.
For you, medyo non-alcoholic kasi nga you're how do you call this? Taking antibiotics. Pero William, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for accepting our invite. Sa mga hindi nakakalam, sobrang bilis lang na invite ni William. Minessage ko lang sa Instagram. So, so biglang umuo, nagulat ako. Wow, okay. Sige, game. Tapos wala nang tanong-tanong. Basta see you Friday, ganyan lang. So, yun nga, totoo yung sinabi Sir Noy P. William T, down to earth. You can talk to him through
Yes.
Instagram, I think.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
know
yeah. Of course, everyone's welcome.
Oh,
Ayan. Yung mga toy geeks dyan, tag nyo siya sa mga toys nyo. I'm sure he's gonna enjoy that. Pa ba? Yun.
and
So,
of course, we're
um,
we're also looking forward for the anthology this
hmm,
coming, I think, February.
Um, we might move it. We might move it. February
Might
kasi
move it, might move
baka
it.
things might not be back to.
In
It's either we do an
May.
online thing, but I am not very partial to that. So we might move it.
Ah, okay.
October
Then
daw,
we'll wait for
Tams.
it. We'll wait for it. Ah, October?
Baka,
Hindi
baka.
pwede. Hindi yun eh.
May chance. May chance.
Oh, pero you heard it here. You heard it here
Hindi.
first.
You heard it here.
Ayan,
Marami kayong
ayan.
wala puntahan October 12, 2021.
Yan. Tama, tama. Tayo online lang. Hindi, pagkatapos ng anthology, kung gusto niyo na medyo beer naman, punta kayo sa sa Triangle lang
may
eh.
may Arktoberfest session sa Anthology.
Oo,
Ayun lang.
yan.
Ayun lang.
Lalagyan natin ng Oktoberfest doon, syempre.
Oy, naman.
Pero kailangan gawa na yung public space natin.
Oo nga,
Oo nga.
para
Makakapunta doon.
tayo.
Oo.
Ano yung magandang yun? Sabi nga kanina, we're talking
Mm.
about progression. Ang magandang progression yan.
Yes.
Ngayon, online
Mm.
lang tayo. Tapos nagkaroon ng project. Tapos, yun yung story natin sa booth. Ayan na, Tams.
Yes.
Uuwi ka na niyan from Singapore.
Mukhang uuwi ako. Ganyan.
Uwi na.
Uwi
We
na,
need more people in this country.
Yan. So yun, William, thank you. It's been an inspiring night for me especially.
Yes.
Ulitin ko lang yung kasi in anthology, I had this chance to ask you a question. And in my mind, I was super convinced na, hindi niya siguro alam yung street level kasi me and my wife would like to walk them like you. And when I asked that question, parang I was floored na, hindi, real deal to. Real deal si William. He knows what he's talking about. Pag sinabi niya na sa kalye, kasi rare as architect, di ba? Yung parang, you see architects na parang sobrang business attire, ganyan. Parang hindi ko naman nakikita naglalakad to sa tondo or di ba? Pero you, with your black shirt on lang, naalala ko naka-Yeezy 350 ka pa nun eh.
Yeah. That's my everyday outfit.
Yan, everyday out. Hindi nyo talaga mapapansin si William if you come across him na parang, that's the guy who's, runs WTA. He's so simple and easy to approach, like tonight. So, William, thank you very much. Congratulations on all your accolades. On your toy collection, sorry, hindi tayo masyadong nakapag-dive into that. Pero, is there anything that you want as a last word to our audience, our 43 million viewers in our stream? Anything you want to say to them?
Well, to all 43 million of you,
Yes.
no, the hope is that I think of course we live in very challenging times as architects also, but at least we have this for us. We have architecture to keep us together. We have something to look forward to having a better built environment. Really, this is really an opportunity for architecture to be able to rethink our roles in society, for us to actually come up with the important questions that will allow us to move forward after we get out of this tunnel that we're all currently in together. So hopefully, in the year to come and the years ahead, we will have much more interesting things coming out of each and every one of us now that we've had, this time to ourselves to reflect and, better strengthen our sensibilities and ideas about architecture and our built environment. So I welcome all of you. I hope to hear your questions. I know we are all fearful for our, health and well-being right now. We are, rightly so cautious about our built environment. And so us ourselves, as we are building, Horizon Manila in the years to come, I also welcome, ideas and questions from everyone. So thank you.
All right, William
Hey,
T.
thank you for being our first guest for the
Cheers.
October. For
Sorry, no,
cheers,
naubos ko na.
cheers, cheers.
Cheers, 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 cheers. Coffee
Kape muna
yata
sa
yun.
akin.
Mm. Oh, ayan. All good, sir. And guys, with that,
And
thank you for joining us.
yeah,
Um,
yes, mhm. Yeah, this
sige ta.
Oktoberfest 2020 is brought to you by Boysen, the number one paint, of course, Crown Pipes,
Poison,
Duma
Crown
Floors, yes,
Pipes,
and powered by ITC Corporation.
ITC. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for yes.
Ay, William, you're